Hello, and welcome back to Ancient Aliens in Modern Times. I'm your host, Melanie Wild. I am a New Earth Reiki Master Teacher. And here on the podcast, I am diving into all things extraterrestrial, all things ancient, all things New World Order. I want to find the root of the chaos and destruction that's happening on planet Earth in current modern times. And through my research and deep dives down all of the rabbit holes, I have been linking a multitude of different religious contexts into what's happening today with all of the chaos, all of the fear, all of the control. And I've decided that I want to have guests on the podcast because I do believe that we are all of God and we all are here to offer different perspectives of the one God consciousness. And so, through these different perspectives, we can learn so much from one another. And so today I am interviewing the lovely Brandie Furniss. Has been ordained in 2012, I believe it was, as a priest in the Order of Melchizedek. And Melchizedek is a name that has come up multiple times on the podcast. It is a name that we explore in my New Earth Reiki level 3, the master level course. And when I stumbled into Brandie's field and found out that she, one, knew who Melchizedek was, and two, was ordained under his priesthood, I was like, I need Brandie on this podcast. I need to pick your brain, girl. And she is a beautiful soul. It was a wonderful conversation that her and I had together. And we get into her history because I want to know about my guests. I want to know what brought them onto this path of enlightenment and what made them become healers. And so for Brandie, we get into her story, her history, why she is the woman she is today. We talk about Melchizedek. We talk about the Great White Brotherhood. Then we tie this all together in the next episode where you will get to receive a healing treatment from her, because I think it's so important that as we're going into these somewhat dark truths of destruction and chaos of this planet, that we bring with us the light. And in order to bring with us the light, we need to fill ourselves with the light. And so that's why I'm having healers come on the podcast, because I want to fill you with light. I want you to truly feel like you can make a difference in this world, that your light is meaningful, and that you have great purpose. And we're not just like taking one step to the next off of the edge of a cliff here, that there is hope for humanity, that there is a way that we are going to gather together and rebuild the new earth, which is why I've invented or founded New Earth Reiki, is so that we can feel really good about this. But we cannot fight the darkness. We cannot fight this war if we do not know what we're up against. So on other podcast episodes, we talk about what we're up against. And today, without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Brandie. She's been teaching energy medicine courses and hosting transformational events for 11 years, with about 30 years experience studying advanced metaphysics, culinary herbalism, and holistic lifestyle practices that have been evolving over the last couple of decades. She's a co-creative intuitive or hosts co-creative intuitive healing sessions as a certified practitioner in the alchemical arts, a spiritual life coach, while also balancing being a mother of 3 children, an artisan, and an entrepreneur. Please welcome Brandie. Okay, everyone, welcome to today's episode with our special guest, Brandie Furniss. Now, am I saying your last name right, Brandie?
Yeah, it's either Furnace or Furnace. People say it
Furniss.
differently, but you did good.
Thank you. So Brandie, I found you shortly after I decided to start having guests on the podcast, and it was by divine intervention that you landed in my inbox because you have been ordained in the Order of Melchizedek, and I am super fascinated about Melchizedek and this order. So I want to know all about you. I want our listeners to know how you got here and all of the different spiritual tools that you have under your belt. You are a healer of many trades, as I'm taking a peek here at your resume of all of the different modalities that you offer. So, my first question for you is, how did you get here? What led you on this journey? Where did it all begin?
Yeah, thank you so much, Melanie. I really appreciate being here with you today. I do remember as early as age 7 finding my mother's book on herbs, and I just became super obsessed with plants and how they can help us heal. I found a book on telepathy and ESP development when I was 10, actually, in my school library. And then by the time I was 13, I was laying out on my friend's trampoline. And at first, I thought that I was seeing satellites, but the positioning and the way that they were moving in the starlit sky, I had this overwhelming feeling that they were UFOs or light ships. I also made a wish when I was 17 to have more integrity with every thought. I did not know at the time that it was going to make me start to be able to read energy, hear other people's thoughts, and really tap into my own intuitive natures that we all have. But what happens is we get a lot of stress or anxieties, or we get ungrounded, or we're eating things that are highly chemical laden, or using cleaning products or beauty products that have all kinds of chemicals, or we are on pharmaceutical drugs, which numb these things up. I, of which, was not doing a lot of that. I wasn't wearing makeup. I was staying away from chemicals. And I just really remember being 19 and staying on a farm out in Kaywood right after graduating high school in 2003. And there was a woman there that practiced Reiki. And I was really super interested in exchanging a session with her. I already knew I was a healer. I had been giving massages to my friends, and I had been writing about alchemy and mixing different kinds of herbs together and really just studying advanced metaphysics from that time. I was about 10 to 13. She had this paperwork that said Melchizedek on it. I did not know what that was really. I had went to some Bible study school a little bit when I was a child, but my father said he was a card-carrying Catholic, and my mom said that we were Protestant, but they did not practice any of the religion. I wasn't really exposed to a lot of things, but I can remember as a child um, reading about Mary Magdalene and how they were calling her a prostitute. And I got really mad and was like, no, she was not. Even as a little girl, I was like, that's wrong. Um, I don't believe that. And why on earth would they be saying these things? And I had a different view of what potentially Satan or the devil was. I was like, that's not even real what they're talking about. There's something else that we're not being told. So I took this woman's session, and she gave me a Reiki session. Again, this was about 21 years ago, and I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what was going to happen. So she was going to clear my chakras, and she started going around, and she had like some dolphin tattoos. And I know now that the dolphins are, connected with the Sirius Star Nation and unconditional love and things of that nature, which began to unfold. So hearing about Melchizedek and Reiki, I had a huge release. I had never had visions the way that I had when I was on her table. my eyes began to do a rapid eye movement, and I started seeing all kinds of visions, and tears just poured out of me for about 3 days after that. I
Mm.
didn't know if what she did was beneficial to me or non-beneficial to me, because at the time, there was a lot of uncertainty based off of what I had been told, what I was learning in school, what I had picked up from my parents, and then what I was feeling internally.
Mhm. Wow. So, I want to go back to the spaceships. This is all crazy that you're having these experiences so young, right? Like you're 10 years old and you're very aware. So what was that like? What did it feel like to look up in the sky? Were you 10 or 13 at this point when you're seeing these
Yeah,
lights?
I was 13 when I was seeing these light ships. There must have been like five, six, or seven of them. I just saw seven, but I only remember about five. But just the way that they were moving in unison with each other, I knew that that couldn't be satellites. And I was like, I know magic is real. I always knew that there was something beyond what we've been taught and what we've been shown. But because I had been exposed to all different kinds of supernatural movies and horrors and different things like that as a child, I was like, okay, thank you, basically for presenting yourself to me. But I wasn't connected enough to get messages from those beings at that point. I just was feeling like they're showing me this for a reason.
Mhm. And did they show up again after, later in life?
Not, yes, but not until late 2012. So that was quite a few years later.
Right. Okay, so you've received this very intense Reiki treatment from a woman with dolphin tattoos who I'm saying this because we're going to relate this with Sirius and your connection here to this star system. So what happens next in your life? You're like, "Okay, I'm seeing visions. I'm not sure if this is good for me, bad for me, middle for me. Where do you go from here?"
I kind of went into a dark night of the soul experience. I was kicked out of my home as a teenager and was sleeping in my car. And then I went to go stay with my friend in her college dorm for a couple of weeks before I could pull myself together and rent a room in a house in Rochester, New York. So this was about a year and a half later from staying on the farm and having that experience. I didn't really know what I was supposed to do with my life. I was serving tables and working in restaurants for about 4 or 5 years, but I met my children's father in the beginning of 2005, and we immediately clicked. I saw that I was supposed to have children with him immediately, and so we decided to move in with one another. And within a few months, he had proposed to me. And so I was organic gardening, and we had our first child 9 months and 2 days after our wedding. Everything seemed to move really, really fast. And people couldn't really tell that I was suffering. Like they always were like, I feel so good around you, or, you're so brilliant, or, just hearing positive things from people in my life. It wasn't really obvious to people that I had this inner turmoil that I was dealing with.
Mm. So, did this dark night of the soul, how long did this last until you started maybe seeking these spiritual tools that you now have in your toolbox?
Yeah, so I'm 40 now. I just turned 40 on the first day of the year of the dragon and the new moon last month, February 10th. So when I was 22, I just really committed to the land. I basically married myself to the land, lived on 100 acres, and was growing over 50 different varieties of fruits and vegetables. And the more that I cut these GMOs and chemical laden foods out of my diet, the more sensitive, the more intuitive that I became. But I also kind of got isolated and just focused on helping my children's father build his masonry company, and then raising my children. And so I always felt this like underlying, like something wasn't quite right. And I would get sad a lot. But I did have a lot of joy. I never really experienced true joy until I was about 28 years old, where I felt it and just these tears of gratitude just started flowing. Um, by the time I had my second child in 2010, which he's going to be 14 on 4/14 at 3:33 p.m. next month. So I have all these dates and numbers too that kind of showed up for me. I was having TMJ, the depression type feelings. I would get angry about things, and I didn't know where that rage was like coming from. I also had been creating my own herbal remedies and trying to remedy these things through plants. And I also can remember having headaches 2 or 3 days a week, going to the chiropractor a couple times a week to try to clear these issues because I was developing these fibromyalgia type symptoms. And I couldn't understand where this pain was coming from because it just started getting stronger and stronger and stronger into my 20s.
Mm. So your body's telling you that, look, something's not right. And you're not recognizing yet what it is that's not right, but you're recognizing that your body is talking to you. And what's
Mhm.
also really fascinating is your connection with the earth at this point, and plant medicine and using plants to heal yourself. So, what do you do next? Where do we go from here? You're like, I'm sick, I'm not well. You're going to the chiropractor. At what point do you move into the energetic system of healing from the plant medicine to the energies?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was having some rocky times in my marriage. My husband at the time, his grandmother had passed away, and he was getting increasingly volatile from his own trauma and things that he was dealing with. So I went to go stay with my friend out in the Finger Lakes. Actually, it's really interesting because she's coming here today, and she hasn't been here in 5 years. And I saw
Oh.
her here. It's really interesting, yeah, how these things play out. But I was visiting her, and she said, "You need to go see this woman named Mary." And I was like, okay. And all of these women named Mary started popping up into my life. But specifically, this particular Mary lived out by Watkins Glen and was a flower essences practitioner and an alchemist and an optimist, is what she calls herself. It was July of 2012, and I called her for a session to see what this was all about. And she said, okay, you just give me permission to connect with your higher self, and I will tap into your energy field and see what's going on. So the time and the date that she had set to do this, and I hadn't met her in person yet. Um, I walked out to the little stream or creek out behind the house and just sat down on like a wooden bridge. And all of a sudden, all of these golden and white platinum light sparks started going off around me. And I had this wash come over me where I was like, oh my goodness, oh my God. I knew magic was real my whole life. And this is really showing me something because I could feel her working on me from hundreds of miles away. I think she lives about 2.5 hours from here where I'm at. And then all of a sudden, I felt this energy come over me that said, you have to go back up to the house right now. And I was like, okay. So I start my little trek up there. I laid down, and as soon as I laid down, it was like, boom, passed out. Her team put me out to work on me. When I came back to, I called her, and she started telling me about where these perceived blockages are in my energy field. And she set an appointment up with me for me to come out there to meet her, which was actually the day after my brother got married in 2012 at the beginning of August. So I had told her, hey, I started seeing these things, I started feeling these things, and then boom, I was exhausted and like knocked out. So she started talking to me about flower essences and like the different vibrations and how they hold these patterns in nature that are a higher vibration than even crystals. So what I understand is that pharmaceuticals have a certain vibration. A lot of them are synthetic or made from other plants. And then we have homeopathy, and then gem and crystal essences, and then flower essences hold some of the highest vibrations on the planet. And I was
Mm.
fascinated because something told me to go into my attic and pull this box out. I opened the box and it was full of books that I hadn't even looked at yet. I hadn't even opened it. And there was books on flower essences, Tibetan sound healing, and things like that. And I was like, yes, my soul must have known these things all along the way, because I have these little notes and these things that I would keep, but I wasn't fully integrated at the time.
Right, right. You were working through your own shadows, right? So it was like
Absolutely.
you were drawn to these things and collecting them for the time that you were ready for that integration, right? Wow, that's so powerful. I got goosebumps when you were talking about how you passed out after. It was like, yeah, she was like, and that's so cool too about distance treatments, right? Like how powerful they can be through time and space. You're not even on the phone with her. Like you're just out in your own mind, not connected to technology. And yet this energy that she's working with can still affect you and her guides can still come to you where you are despite not being together, which is super cool. Um, so now you're I would say this is probably the beginning, hey, of an awakening for you.
Absolutely. I felt like I was resurrected after meeting her. And a lot of people that, were religious, and if I used that word, they kind of freaked out on me. I was like, well, I was feeling dead inside at times, and I got brought back to life. So I thought that
Mhm.
that was the most appropriate word to use.
Right. So, what's next in your life? Where do you go from here? Now you're like, "Okay, I always knew it was real, now it's confirmed. This is very real." Where do you go? What's next?
Yeah, so I started feeling better. My headaches seemed to pretty much have disappeared. The tension in my jaw and the holding of my breath and feeling like I was cringing, like I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders and I didn't know how to release it, started to dissipate from me. So I'm visiting with Mary and she hands me a box of her flower essences and I immediately like a wing, like I like got uplifted. I felt an ascension happening within my being. So she sat me down and she had, I think, probably a good 5 to 7 pages of information that she had written up about what came up in my bio field. And she kept mentioning her team. My entire spine was blocked. All of my chakras were closed except for my solar plexus was open 80%. And later from studying, I realized the sacred truth of the solar plexus is to honor yourself first. It's the seat of your personal power. It's connected with the fire. It's connected with the soul, the sunshine, and the mental body. So I had a good head on my shoulders. I was just deeply suffering. Had a little cry with her and it just popped out of my mouth. I was like, you keep talking about your team. I was like, do I have a team? And then she went and showed me this book by Michelle Smallwright, who has a nature research center in Virginia called Paralandra Ltd. And the book is like navy blue and it's got silver writing on it. And it says the Co-Creative White Brotherhood Medical Assistance Program.
Mm.
And I just felt like, okay, I need that book. I need to find out more. What I learned from her about energy medicine and Donna Eden's work, and then also Carolyn Mace and the work that she did with her books, Anatomy of the Spirit and Sacred Contracts. She gave me a packet of information and said, look here, and look here. And I was like, okay. I read the book. And I wouldn't tell people, I had mentioned this to you before, but I wouldn't tell people I worked with the White Brotherhood for probably about 5 or 6 years because I didn't want anyone to ever think I was a white supremacist or that I was racist or anything like that because I had genuine care in my heart about wanting to help myself and others. I got into this healing work a lot more because my daughter had been born with her umbilical cord around her neck. They told me she had failure to thrive despite that we were eating organic. I was breastfeeding her and just doing all the things I thought that a young mom should do. So I opened what's called a coning that you learn how to do from the book, and you connect with the involution, nature intelligence. So the Devic realm, Deva means angel in Sanskrit. I had already been studying world religions and other different types of healing, but I hadn't fully got immersed in the energy work until 2012. As soon as I opened the coning, the first session, you get scanned for a team. And I was the only one in the room, but then two beings appeared at the foot of my bed that looked like scientists, and the one in the front had glasses on and a clipboard. And I was like, oh, I'm never going to be alone again, am I? And I was trying to wrap my head around being an I, like I am Brandie, to it's a we situation now.
Powerful. Okay, so tell me about the White Brotherhood. Who are
Okay,
they?
so they're a highly evolved group of beings that have, I'd say mostly, but in Michelle's book, they said they've all been human before. They just said now, and I get telepathic messages from them. So they just said, most of us are, but they're a highly evolved group of beings that have been different types of medical professionals, like surgeons and neuroscientists and beings of that nature. They've either had one or hundreds of lifetimes on Earth. So I do believe in reincarnation. Um, and I started seeing things. I started having more visions. My psychic skills started really coming online. I had been clairaudient already since I was about 17. Then by the time I was 28, I was developing more of the clairvoyance, that's the clear seeing, and more of the clairsentience, which is feeling. So I became a physical medium or an empath, someone who can sense or feel and see energy more than I was growing up. Looking back on my childhood, I always felt that it was really strange because nothing moved. Everything seemed solid. It just seemed super mundane. But as I got older, I started to recognize the mythical and the mystical and how we can rewrite our story at those levels of the mythical and the symbolic. So I learned a lot from the White Brotherhood right away. And I wanted to begin doing hands-on healing. So in the state of New York, where I reside, there was 3 different options of ways that I could do hands-on healing. One of them was to become a registered nurse, a licensed massage therapist, or to become ordained and become a priest.
Mm. And which way did you go?
I decided to get ordained in the Order of Melchizedek.
Yes. So, who's Melchizedek?
So, what I understand of Melchizedek is that he came in as a perfectly balanced being, was not born of a mother and a father. And while Melchizedek was here, wrote the book of Job, and was also one of the incarnations of what we know as of the Christ. Also formed the White Brotherhood while was here on the planet before spontaneously combusting when his work was finished on the planet. And I say perfectly balanced being because he was beyond gender, but did present as a masculine figure. He seems very fatherly, but the name Melchizedek truly means the Most High.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know at the time that me reading the White Brotherhood Medical Assistance program and me getting ordained in the Order of Melchizedek was going to begin to weave these threads together of the tapestry of life. That I had so many questions. What ties in these religious traditions? What ties in these different spiritual lineages that I was fascinated about?
Mm-hmm. Um, so super crazy because you're following this order of the White Brotherhood, and then you get ordained in the Order of Melchizedek, and then you cross path these two things.
Mhm.
So how did this come that you realized that what you were doing, what seemed like two separate things, were of one of the same?
Well, it kind of just like dawned on me because I was doing research and I was reading about how Melchizedek was mentioned in the Old Testament of the Bible, in Genesis, and also in the Psalms and in a couple other places. And then I remembered from the New Testament at the time, because I hadn't read the entire Bible and I still have yet to read certain books and even some of the removed books. It's something that I would like to do more and delve into more. But I don't consider myself as someone who follows organized religion. And so I was getting a little bit of backlash from my husband's family, um, because they're all Christian and they don't believe similar things that I do. And so it was kind of like, a hunt, kind of hunt me down or like question me or, why are you doing this kind of a thing. And I wasn't like really into reading cards or anything like that, but I got into this one group and someone was reading this deck of cards and I was invited to be a guest mentor in this group. And one of the women in the group started talking about Melchizedek and then showed a picture on a card of this long-haired man with the long beard. And I also was researching on YouTube and found out that, like I said, the name Melchizedek means the Most High. And so in the New Testament, we find out that Yeshua ben Joseph, or who Christians call Jesus Christ, was actually ordained in the order of Melchizedek as well.
Mhm. Yes, we do. And then um there's a lot of opinions out there that think that Yeshua is a reincarnation of Melchizedek, right? And that they are of the same oversoul. So, what's Melchizedek's MO?
The order of Melchizedek and the sanctuary of the beloved that I was ordained, basically, you can be of any faith or background and you're still accepted. So you could be Jewish, you could be pagan, you could be Christian, you can not believe in any of it. You can be agnostic. I don't really necessarily think any people that are atheist joined. I haven't heard of that, but this order was formed to help with the ascension process and to relieve suffering of the human condition while humanity has been being liberated in many different ways from being created as a slave race
Mhm.
to find gold and to build things for other beings or other worldly gods or different things of that nature, things
Right.
that can have manipulation. What I see is kind of like a puppet master type thing where these strings have been being cut. And so a lot of us light workers have incarnated on this planet to be of service, to provide healing and guidance and facilitate holding the light, holding the Christ consciousness grid so that humanity can find solace and relief and learn the origins and the nature of who and what we truly are.
Mhm. I am in complete alignment with everything that you just said, and I wanna know, do you think that this order of Melchizedek is off planet?
I would say no. Um, I would say not off planet. I would say it's all interconnected and it's all happening here now in the unified field of consciousness. So, do I believe that there could be like bases or places where this lineage is operating multidimensionally? Absolutely, yes.
Mm. So what does that mean, multidimensionally?
So I had read an article, a scientific article actually, several years ago about dimensions and how humanity can access different dimensions within the mind. This article spoke of 11 different dimensions, but I believe that there are more of that. Um, I asked my team for a soul name in 2012 or beginning of 2013, and I had written something down, and my guide said, "You spelled it wrong." And I was like, I just kind of laughed about it or whatever. It was only a couple of letters off. But I started hearing these different languages. I didn't even know what speaking in tongues in the church was because I didn't go to church as a child. And so just over 10 years ago, I started spontaneously speaking these different languages. Um, so I just want to back up to that 2012 mark again for a moment because I was reading a book called The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life by Melchizedek. Have you heard of him?
I have not, but I'm very curious.
So there's two books that have the flower of life on it. There's a blue book and there's a purple book. And I was reading these books and there's a Merkaba activation. So Merkaba means light, body, soul. Okay. We've seen the Star of David. It's these two triangles that are inverted, one of them pointing up, one of them pointing down. In a 3D depiction, it's a star tetrahedron, which is the chariot of ascension. And if you look at the Anahata chakra, the heart chakra symbol, you'll see that there's a Star of David on it, which, like I mentioned, is the 2D depiction of the 3D Merkaba.
Mm-hmm.
I'm reading in this book and I heard a voice say, "Come downstairs and come out to the garden." And I was like, sometimes I didn't listen to those voices in my head because at the time I thought I was a little crazy. I mean, I didn't, but I did at the same time because I'm like, who listens to the voices in their head, anyways? So I come down the stairs and I put my boots on and I touched the door handle and I was like, ooh, I started like having all of these thoughts because those books have information in them about our origins and our history and, coming from extraterrestrial beings and things like that. And it's very controversial, especially in 2012. Nobody in my area was talking about any of these things. And I did not go outside, but I heard the same voice say, "Well, come look out the bathroom window." And I said, "All right, I'll do that." So I took my boots off, walked into the bathroom, and it was completely cloudy, overcast. It was dark. It was night. It was probably sometime after 10, 11 p.m. Heard the same voice say, because I was like a little impatient. I'm like, this is weird. Like, what am I doing down here? I should be in bed. Same exact voice say, "Just wait 5 seconds." So I started counting in my head. As soon as 5 seconds got there, and like I said, you could see no stars. I could see the lilac bush. I could see a couple things, but I couldn't even see the neighbor's house. And all of a sudden, this swirling green light came out of the fog and out of the clouds, and it almost was in the shape of an archangel. And I was like, whoa. I was like, I've never seen anything like this before. And it was there for a little bit of time. And then the green light went away, and this bright, flashing strobe light just started pulsing right in my face and my third eye. And I saw it with my two eyes. I did not just see it in my third eye, my ajna, my brown brow chakra. So I started to see that strobe light going off in my face when I was in bed. And this being with this long beak came to me, and I didn't know who it was at the time. Very strong masculine presence started speaking these languages to me that I had no idea what was being said, but there was a translation coming through at the same time, and just like just peace and calm. I was kind of trying to sink into my bed a little bit more. I was a little bit freaked out because I didn't know what to think. I'm like, oh my gosh, is something going to happen to me? Like whatever. And
Is
I
this it?
later,
Have I truly lost it?
yeah, I later found out that that being was Tehuti Thoth, who's also known as Hermes.
Yes. Which brings us to Thoth. Or how do you say? Tehuti?
Huti, yeah.
So what's the pantheon for the name Tehuti? Because I've only heard of him as Thoth and Hermes.
Yeah, so he's the scribe of Egypt from the Egyptian pantheon. And most interesting thing was that in July, so that was in the autumn of 2012, but in July or June, a few months prior, my friend told me that I should go see that woman named Mary. She gave me 4 CDs that was The Secret by Rhonda Burns, which I had come to find out was based on the emerald tablets of Thoth.
Yeah. That's so interesting. The Secret has been coming up in my field so much the last few months in like very different contexts that aren't in this realm. Like my wife got a new job and her boss loves The Secret and told her to watch it and was so it's just and she works in like the automotive industry, just so you like it's like very far removed from what we're doing here. So that's super interesting you've brought this up now. Okay, so Tehuti, is this how we say it?
Yeah, when I had looked up, I wanted to look at different calendars because, we're in the Gregorian 2024, and,
Yeah.
AD, which translates to in the year of our Lord. But there's other years and other timelines where it's different numbers. And I wanted to find out what other lineages, what other places on the planet, like what time of year it is for them, or different things like that, because it didn't dawn on me really that, like, okay, well, it's the spring equinox here now this week in the north, but it's autumn in the southern hemisphere because I was never a world traveler.
Mhm.
I was mostly in New York and the East Coast of the United States mostly my entire life. I wasn't a well-traveled person. I was going through what I needed to go through to prepare myself to be who I've become today.
Right. So, what's your experience with him like? With South?
Definitely brings me into my writing, definitely has me integrating different knowledge and different wisdom teachings and helped me to find that common thread. In The Secret of Secrets, that's a part of the Emerald Tablets, which came up in my realm a couple years after listening to those 4 CDs. And then later I did watch the movie. It's very informative. There's a lot of scientists, there's a lot of really professional people that talk about this. But this is with Thoth, with Tehuti, and with Melchizedek and the White Brotherhood. It just brought everything full circle to me and gave me a confidence and ability to live my life where otherwise I had felt, whittled down at times. Women couldn't even own a bank account without the signature of their father until the 1970s here. And I'm
Mhm.
from Seneca Falls, which is the birthplace of women's rights. And so there was a lot of background about needing a man to survive or, things of that nature. And what Thoth had brought to me was that interconnectedness of the mind. What is our consciousness? What is the subconsciousness? What is the collective unconsciousness or the shadow? And really helping me like put the pieces together and figure things out. Because honestly, I always felt like a late bloomer. I always felt like I wasn't as good as other people. It was a worth issue. And I really feel like studying the Egyptian gods and working with the White Brotherhood and really finding my value. I was always worthy, but because of society and because of abuse that I had endured at times and certain traumas that I've been healing from and deprogramming from for the last 15, 20 years, it is a huge practice to claim your sovereignty. And it's something that you need to do daily, especially when we live in a realm where everyone and everything wants to try to take your time, energy, or power and
Mhm.
make you think you're less than when you're actually not.
Mhm. I feel like a lot of people, probably more people than not, can relate to that feeling of being a late bloomer, like you don't know enough. And you know what? I think in this world that you and I are in discovering these ancient texts and having these experiences with these different entities, it's it's so vast that I don't think that even in one human lifetime we could possibly even comprehend or scratch the surface of it all, because there is so much hidden knowledge that we are now in present day only just uncovering. So, I want to ask you, how do Thoth and Melchizedek or the White Brotherhood, how do these three aspects of your journey overlap with one another?
Yeah, so I had found out, I was studying all of that in 2012 because there was a great alignment that was going to take place, and it was said to occur on December 21st, 2012, which was the winter solstice. And I had met somebody that was teaching me blessing meditation. So meditation is what helped me open up to these common threads, is what helped me open up to the interconnectedness, or what we could call oneness, within the unified field of consciousness. To recognize that we have this individuation from source, we have this, living soul that is, our being. Um, but we also have, like I said, this oneness where um, we call the sun, right? And in Espanol, it's soul, SOL. And so I had mentioned before, I was trying to wrap my head around being an I am Brandie, I am, me, I'm this human being having a spiritual experience, or I'm a spiritual being having a human experience, and what that really meant. Going from that seemingly identity crisis of I'm a collective, I've had other lifetimes, and I'm now a we because I'm a part of this team that I said that I would become of service and learn healing things, or really remember um, these different regenerative qualities, or how to work with nature and universal intelligence to bring a peace that surpasses all understanding. And from that, I recognize that we're more alike than we're different in many ways.
Mm, beautiful. So, changing gears a little bit here.
Mhm.
Your healing practices, what are they? What are your offerings? What is it that you have come to serve, as you've spoken of, to the world around you?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking that. So it started off, like I mentioned, opening those concentrated vortex. It's like a conference call between nature intelligence, my team, my higher self, and then the higher self of whoever that I'm working with. I always ask permission to connect, and I started working with using my body as a pendulum to test, like, show me a yes, show me a no. Once I figured out what my yes and no was, there were so many different ways to use kinesiology. So I started practicing kinesiology in 2012, and then that led me to doing medical intuition, learning how to track imbalances within the crystal matrix of the human body field to find the root cause of the suffering, the disease, the dysfunction, the disharmony, and provide intuitive assessments to my clients to be like, okay, do you have cords? Do you have implants? Are you on the right frequency? Are there blockages that are stuck, stagnant, conscripted, or rigid in the biofield? Or is there shock? Is there trauma? Is there karmic miasmic patterning? So all of this language, I've had to find a way to deliver it to people in a way that they could understand, or that they wouldn't get, freaked out about what I was doing. And I learned how to test in different ways. So I use my hands now to create a circuit and a tester so I can scan an entire biofield within 15 minutes, where it used 15, 20 minutes, where it used to take me an hour to 2 hours to do an entire reading, where the people that were allowing me to practice on them and receive readings would get, 2 to 8 pages worth of information. So I'd be reading the chakras. Are they open? Are they closed? What are the percentages? And later, a couple years after that, I learned how to do DNA activations to weave the 12 and higher stranded DNA to clear that miasmic patterning from the muscle memory so that you can rewire your brain to receive these higher vibrational frequencies that are getting pulsed into the planet. I was doing all of this without any certifications, just under, well, I am certified as an early childhood education, and also ordained in the Order of Melchizedek at that time. But I thought that people wanted to start to see certifications on my wall and things like that. So I went through the first 3 degrees of Reiki, became a Reiki master teacher. I went through different levels of integrated energy therapy to the advanced level. I also provide telegraph testing and make flower essences. Flower remedies are liquid solutions that encourage change rather than compel, meaning if you take a pharmaceutical or you take a chemical, it's going to change your biochemistry. If you take a flower essence, yes, there's preservative of either alcohol or vinegar in it, but it's a pattern that's held in nature that holds those higher vibrations. And earlier you had asked me about the multidimensional levels and things, and we live in a 3D universe, right? But we have access to these other realms of consciousness. So I began to hear these different languages. Like I mentioned, Thoth was the first being that spoke to me like that. And then I started practicing speaking what I was hearing, and I was hearing tones in my ears and like really high pitched things that people could maybe call tinnitus or something like that. But I had never experienced it before. So I was mimicking what I was hearing until I began to speak these different languages and speak them in front of groups of people. And it was causing visceral reactions in people to where they would say, I feel lighter. I feel like you took a heavy weight off me, or other weird things would happen from speaking these light languages. And I've studied other different traditions and things like that. I got initiated in the Peruvian shamanism from the high Andes. It's called the Munaiki in 2015, and I started hosting these shamanic healing. Munaiki means I love you in the Quechua language. And so Dr. Alberto Vilodo, he went to, they took 2 simultaneous journeys in 2006 to Asangate and Salcante. Apus are the mountains. They're the greatest nature spirit. They're the biggest and greatest nature spirits that we have here on the planet. And they decided that as many people as possible needed to receive these emanations or these sacred rites of passage during this time of transition that was set to occur around 2012, like we mentioned. And my psychic and intuitive and mediumship abilities just got stronger and stronger till where people were contacting me that were haunted and would be asking me to do house clearings and land clearings, or people would find me after they've exhausted all other avenues. And they find me and they're like, well, we wish we would have found you sooner.
So, what are your current offerings? How do people work with you today? How, if they're listening to this podcast right now and they're like, oh my God, Brandie, tell me, how do I hire you?
Yeah, absolutely. I have the full assessment that I call the original body oracle. That's a combination of the bioscans and the medical intuition with a golden aura energy cleansing process. And with the notes, some people say, I don't want the notes, just put me on your table, or I can work remotely too. I started doing these readings remotely before I ever saw people in person. So you can be potentially anywhere on the planet and with permission to connect to your higher self and facilitate these shifts within the etheric double of your physical body. All you need to do is be open to it. And I do have a website that's my first and middle name, brandiekristle.com, and also thebodyoracle.com will go to the same location. I host workshops and transformational events. So I've had people come from out of state or out of the area to come to my center here in Bergen, New York. I've been here for 4 years. I'll probably be here. I've recommitted to the space for another year or two. It's a quite conservative area, but things are starting to open here more now that we've moved through the pandemic. But yeah, anyone that wants to hire me and work with my co-creative team and myself, I've got booking apps. You can always give me a call or email me at oracleofwny@gmail.com. And I'm always here to answer questions.
Beautiful. And I'll put all of that information in the show notes as well, so it can be an easy click for everyone listening. My next question, as we wrap up our conversation, is our next episode. You're going to offer, and your team, a distance or remote healing session for those of you that are listening. What's that going to look like, Brandie?
Yeah, so I'm going to tap into the group field of influence, and we are going to facilitate an energy cleansing with the white light of Christ and the green light of nature. I'm going to call in my team and my guides, and we're going to just allow whatever needs to be uplifted or evolved. So energy cleansing is a process of evolution and not negation. So it's really my intention that whatever needs to be cleared or cleansed just be transformed ultimately and go on to its next highest process of evolution in the universe. And I may bring in some light codes with a DNA activation that helps to restructure the DNA so that anything that could be broken per se or disconnected between the neurotransmitters and the way that those chemical coherencies of our cells communicate. It'll be an energetic and just overall energy, light language blessing is what I would like to provide.
That sounds beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on today and for sharing your wisdom and your light with this world. It's truly beautiful, everything that you've had to share today. And I hope that it raises some questions for those of you listening to go and look up a lot of these books that Brandie's mentioned today. So, Brandie, thank you. And we'll see you in the next episode.
Wonderful. Thank you, Melanie. It's been a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you so much for the space.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode with Brandie. It has been a pleasure to have you here, and it would mean so much to me if you are able to go into the main page for Ancient Aliens in Modern Times and give us a 5-star review. Let's build this podcast. Let's get more guests on. Leave your feedback and the love and gratitude you have for Brandie and her wisdom in the comments. I look forward to hearing from you. And let me know if there is anyone else you would like me to have on the podcast, any other conversations or topics you'd like to explore. Please, let's keep this an open field of communication, building a community of New Earth leaders. I'm your host, Melanie Wild, and may peace be with you.